Welcome. I'm Marian Gribbets, for those of you that don't know me. I am the Director of Educational Initiatives at Hebrew College in Newton, and I'm so thrilled to be opening our monthly workshop series today. And it's my privilege to be joined today by Robin Kahn, who many of you may know, and Robin recently joined our faculty at Hebrew College, and we'll be working on many of our professional development initiatives as well as adult education. So you'll be hearing from her in different venues. We are so glad to be here today. Really see this as an opportunity to be together in community. Our workshops are set up that way in any event. And one of the wonderful things about being in community is that when things aren't so great for us, we get to put our hair down a little bit together and just be here to support each other. So just as we start this morning, and I'll turn it over to Robin in a second to introduce our wonderful guest, if you feel the need to share with us in the chat, to be able to be present today, put in the chat something that's bringing you joy right now and the things that are holding you down. So no need to write a whole paragraph, but if you just put a sentence, not a sentence, put a word for the joy and a word for the thing that's holding you down. And then hopefully you can put that aside and we can be together in community today as we learn about stories. And just a note that for this year, we are happy to be having our workshop series be on the theme of stories and storytelling. And what better way during times of trouble like we are in right now to refresh and renew ourselves with our stories and make sense of who we are as a community through stories. So thank you as you put your joy and your burden in the chat and join us together. And I'm going to turn over to Robin.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone. It's an honor to introduce Micah, who is probably a familiar face to many of us. But in case you didn't know, Micah is a writer, speaker, and the host of Who Knows One, a 6 Degrees of Separation live show. He spent 20 years creating content and building relationships with audiences for brands like the Atlanta Hawks, the NBA, the Buffalo Wild Wings, and more. He hosts Campfires and Color Wars, a summer camp memory storytelling podcast. And when he's not connecting to people, he lives in Valencia, Spain, with his wife and their 2 children. Welcome, Micah. Thank you for being with us today, all the way from Spain.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Nice to see everyone. I'll just echo very quickly what Marian said. I know these are trying times, to say the least. And I think as communities, it's very difficult to know what's the right thing to do, in particular right now with such nuanced issues to deal with. So I say that, one, to say I am feeling all the same things that you're likely feeling, and to say that it's even more important, perhaps, to think about the power of storytelling, because that's what's driving a lot of what's going on right now, is the stories that we're hearing and how they connect to us, for better or worse in lots of different ways. But there's real power in that. And so that's what we're here to talk about. I'm going to take you through a presentation, and we'll have some time at the end for questions. And that said, if there's something that's burning for the moment, I'm happy to pause. I want this to be as casual a discussion as possible. I'm going to share my screen, and then we'll dive into it. Just tell me, do you see the whole thing, or do you just see? I'm betting you see the whole thing. So let me change it to, if I can, get this thing out of the way. Slideshow. There we go. Okay. So today we're going to talk about how to build community through content, which again, I think is always relevant, but feels even more so today. Robin did a great job of introducing me, so I don't really need to talk too much about this other than just to say I did have a life before Who Knows One, which is weird to think about. I've now been doing Who Knows One longer than any other job I've ever had, except for when I ran digital for the Atlanta Hawks. So that's just feels very strange. Time, I have no concept of time anymore. Here's some of the things we're going to talk about today. What is content marketing? How do you create engaging content? And how can you build a useful content strategy? And I'm going to use examples both from Who Knows One and from my previous work in the corporate world to illustrate a lot of the different things that we're going to be talking about. Well, there we go. If you're not familiar with the expression TLDR, that means too long, didn't read. It's internet shorthand. So basically, if you're doing something else while you're watching this and I don't have your full attention, I get it. But if you can take away just a few things from today, those should be that content needs to be authentic, it needs to be entertaining, and it needs to be informative. It doesn't have to be all of those things. The best content is all of those things, but you at least want to be one of those three for it to be successful. Before we really dive into it, I'm going to take a second to get on my soapbox and just talk about long-term thinking versus short-term thinking. In content in particular, but I believe this way fundamentally when it comes to marketing, if you will. It's very easy to get caught up in like what needs to be done today, what needs to be done this quarter, how are we going to get people to the event next week, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And those are all very important things to think about. And obviously, if you're a business and you aren't making any money, you may cease to be a business. So long-term thinking maybe doesn't feel as important if the short-term doesn't work the way you need it to work. But as a brand builder, which to me, that is the real value of content, you have to treat people like you're building relationships with them. And relationships take time. So when I think about content and when I think about connecting with people through stories in particular, I really think it's important to think about the big picture and building that trust with people over the course of time. And if you're only worried about the short term, then you might be successful in accomplishing your short-term goal, but it might be at the expense of your long-term goals. So I really very strongly recommend to always be thinking about the big picture and your long-term strategy for building relationships as opposed to short-term, which is often very transactional. We're going to back up for a second and talk a little bit about the digital space. So I went to this talk at South by Southwest several years ago, and this piece really stuck out to me. There's basically been 4 digital revolutions, and I'm going to talk through them very briefly. The first revolution was basically in the 1990s, and that was, the advent of the commercial internet. As a business, as a brand, you needed to build a website. That was like a thing that everyone had to do and get people to come to your website. This, by the way, is the website from the movie Space Jam. It still operates today. You can go see it. It's an awesome piece of 90s nostalgia. But that was the goal in the digital space in the 90s. Get a website, have a presence on the internet. Second revolution is 2000, 2010, roughly. This is the rise of search, of Google, of Yahoo, etc. Now everyone's got a website, and now the focus for each brand is how do you show up at the top of those rankings when people are looking for something? So that became the focus of people's work in the digital space.
Oh, yeah. Because we leave the door.
Third revolution, 2010 to roughly 2015, is the rise of mobile and utility. Your phone becomes your world and how you interact with everything. So as a brand, you had to carve out space on people's phone and be useful to them there. So think about Waze, social media, various things like that, airline apps. You needed an app, and you needed an app that people could use for their lives. It was useful to them. And that brings us to the fourth revolution, which is really kind of where we're at now, and that is the rise of filters. So if you think about your own journeys through the internet, and not just the internet, but just all communication channels, email, text, etc., you can personalize and customize pretty much every avenue for people to connect with you. And through that, you can curate your life, and you can sign up for all the news that you want from all the sources you want. And you can block, for the most part, getting information from sources that you don't want. So the importance with that is for people to self-select you. So I'll give you an example of how this plays out. If you're a brand, how do you deal with filters that people have? Let's say you're a BMW enthusiast and you love everything about BMW, and you subscribe to newsletters and you read blogs, and maybe you have an RSS feed and you get all of your content about BMW. That's awesome. You can learn so much about BMW if you're a BMW enthusiast. But what if you're Audi? What do you do if you're Audi trying to reach someone who's a BMW enthusiast? Well, you can try to game the system and sort of sneak through their filters. But what happens if you do that? You, the consumer, who has set up all of these filters to give you only BMW content, you're not happy that you got Audi content. It means your filter is broken. And therefore, you don't have a positive association with Audi because you didn't want to hear about Audi. So what do you do if you're Audi trying to reach that BMW consumer and trying to get through their filters? You really can't do it. So what you have to do is get them to take notice of you through your own endeavors and have them come to you or open their filters to welcome you in. How do you create experiences so compelling that people leave their filters? And that's really where we're at today. And that's why we're going to talk about content marketing. And in this slide, I used to have like an academic quote from a textbook about what content marketing is, but it just felt too school-like. So to make it as simple as possible, content marketing is the use of stories to create connections with your audience. And I feel like Taylor Swift is the perfect example of that for our modern times. People are so invested in her and her music because she tells these incredible stories through her music that are so relatable to so many people. She is a wonderful content marketer. What makes good content? I would argue that good content can be any number of different things. It can be things that make you laugh, things that make you think, things that make you angry, lots of different kinds. And we're going to talk through what some of those different kinds are. Good content is not just success. So if you think about, if you're familiar at all with the hero's journey, I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the idea of the hero's journey is your hero does not go from success to success to success to success. That'd be boring. They stumble, they fall, they rise up again, they fail again, and on until they eventually reach their goal. And it is much more satisfying. A lot of brands make the mistake of only talking about all the wonderful things that they do. And that's great. You should certainly celebrate your successes. But it's funny, today I was listening to a podcast and heard a commercial from BP about the ways that they're innovating in America. And I thought to myself, like, all right, BP, nice try, but like, I know what you really do. Stop trying to pretend that you care about the fate of society, etc. You need to be authentic, and win is not authentic. So good content is sharing the failures as well as the successes. And you can skew it in a positive way for sure. But if you only talk about the good things, or if you outright ignore the very obvious bad things that are associated with your brand, you're not being authentic, and it's harder to build that layer of trust. Good content marketers know who their competition is. So I'll just ask this real quick, and if anyone wants to respond, they can. I worked for the Atlanta Hawks for a long time. Who would you guess might be the Atlanta Hawks competition in marketing? Don't be shy. It's okay. Or maybe you said it in the chat. If it's in the chat, I might not say. Okay, the Pats.
Patriots.
There you go. Completely different sport, but that's totally good. Right. Most people, when they think about a basketball team, their assumption would be that their competitors would be other sports teams, other basketball teams, or maybe other sports teams in Atlanta would be another one that would be a popular answer. But the truth is, in social media in particular, which is where a lot of storytelling is done these days, your competition is everybody else in the feed. Your competition is people's friends, people's family, comedians they're interested in, journalists they follow, organizations they support. Your competition is everybody else competing for their attention. And smart brands realize that and plan their content accordingly. In other words, you want to make content that feels like it makes sense in the place that you're sharing it. If everybody on Facebook is sharing photos of their children, then you don't necessarily need to be sharing photos of your children, but understand what your surrounding content is and how can you both lean into that and how can you stand out from that. And I think a lot of brands make this mistake of focusing on their rivals for your dollar, but this is rivals for your attention. Okay. Good content marketers understand their value proposition. What is it that you have to offer your audience? And lean into that as much as you can. When we were starting out doing Who Knows One virtual shows, it's a contest, it's a game. And the name Who Knows One obviously has a correlation to Passover, which is around the time of March Madness. So we did Elijah's Cup, which was a Who Knows One competition that we've now done the last 3 years surrounding Passover and surrounding March Madness. And the first year we did it, we had 32 teams competing against each other, and we had a bracket, and people filled out, like their own forms of who was going to win. It was a ton of fun because we were a contest and we were leaning into the time of year that we were, and that we were a game and playing off of things that were related going on at the same time. With every piece of content that you put out, you need to think, what is your value proposition? People have very short attention spans, and it is very much a what have you done for me lately when it comes to their attention. So if you put something in front of them and say, this is worth your time, and it's not worth their time, they're going to remember that. And the next time you say, hey, this is worth your time, they're like, nah, that wasn't true last time, so I don't know if I'm going to believe that this time. If you have a useful value proposition and you stick to that with everything you share, then that's how you start to build trust and those relationships. The last thing you gave me was really relevant to me. So the next time you give me something, okay, I'm going to believe that. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the different kinds of content. You have content that entertains, content that educates, content that inspires, and content that converts. And again, these are not onlys. Many different kinds of content can be several of these things, but these are 4 general types of content. So content marketing entertains. I think especially on social media And honestly, especially in the times we live in where you can't even turn around for something else terrible that seems to have happened. Social media in particular is an escape, and people go there because they want to have some, warm fuzzies, or they want something to make them laugh. So something that entertains is pretty high on the list of content that can make a difference. This is a still from one of my favorite episodes of our show ever, where someone brought their mom on, which is always a favorite occurrence on the show, who proceeded to start in the dark, by the way, giving out the phone number of somebody over the internet to an audience of several thousand people. And their son kept trying to tell her to stop, and she just either couldn't hear him or wasn't listening, or who knows. And we were just dying laughing, and it was so hysterical. And honestly, who knows one, there is a winner, so to speak, every game, we are trying to accomplish a task. But if you've watched the show at all, I think probably you'll agree it's much more about the journey than it is the destination. And it's about the fun we have while the game is afoot, more so than the outcome. It's entertaining, and that's why people started to get into it. Content marketing educates. I don't know if any of you are on TikTok necessarily, but there's a guy on TikTok named Tobin Mitnick who has a TikTok called Jews Love Trees. And it is exactly what it sounds like. He just posts content educating people about trees. And that is incredibly niche, but he does it in an entertaining way that he's amassed a pretty significant following. And he talks about other stuff too, but that's a big piece of it, is just teaching people about different trees. Who knew that could be entertaining content? And it educates, but it's done in an entertaining way, and therefore it is effective. Give him a follow. Content marketing can inspire. If you've watched the show, you might have seen Debbie Frank, who is was a chosen one on the show. That's the person that we are trying to find in each episode. Fairly early on in the show, and usually at the end of the show, we give everybody a chance to just kind of say whatever's on their minds. And Debbie shared a really heartfelt message about being a Jewish mother and having room in her heart to essentially, or metaphorically, adopt people who felt like they needed love and support from a Jewish mother. And people actually took her up on that. And she has since formed really meaningful relationships with some people because of the show, because she put herself out there like that. And it was incredibly inspiring. It's really one of the most touching moments we've ever had from the show. So content can inspire. Content can also convert. And I'm gonna play this video for you because it's really one of my favorite examples of content marketing and how it can lead to an actual tangible result.
Hi, I'm Mike, founder of DollarShaveClub.com. What is DollarShaveClub.com? Well, for $1 a month, we send high-quality razors right to your door. Yeah, $1. Are the blades any good? No. Our blades are great. Each razor has stainless steel blades, an aloe vera lubricating strip, and a pivot head. It's so gentle a toddler could use it. And do you like spending $20 a month on brand name razors? 19 go to Roger Federer. I'm good at tennis. And do you think your razor needs a vibrating handle, a flashlight, a back scratcher, and 10 blades? Your handsome-ass grandfather had 1 blade and polio. Looking good, pop up. Stop paying for shave tech you don't need. And stop forgetting to buy your blades every month. Alejandro and I are going to ship them right to you. We're not just selling razors. We're also making new jobs. Alejandro, what were you doing last month?
Not working.
What are you doing now?
Working.
I'm no Vanderbilt, but this train makes hay. So stop forgetting to buy your blades every month and start deciding where you're going to stack all those dollar bills I'm saving you. We are DollarShaveClub.com, and the party is on.
Okay. Oh. The reason that I love this example is I am a convert of this. I used to pay whatever prices for, Gillette razors that were incredibly expensive. And I, in my travels around the internet, saw this commercial, thought it was hysterical, and was like, you know what? I'm going to give it a try. They sold me. And before I grew my beard out and stopped shaving for the most part, was a customer for several years and had blades sent to me every month. And they grew this into a very large company. And it all started with a very simply done 1.5 minute video. It was entertaining. It was funny. It was educational. It told you what their value proposition was. And for me, it converted. I'm going to get back on my soapbox for a second, if you don't mind. And I'm going to talk about quality over quantity. There is always pressure to be posting, be communicating, getting your message out there. And I would say in the last week or two, that's probably felt even more intense for obviously different reasons than normal. But I am a fundamental believer that it is way more important to post quality content than it is to post a lot of content. Going back to the value proposition that we talked about, everything you post, you want there to be value. And if people don't find value, then they will ignore you. And that is worse than anything. It is better to be hated than to be ignored. So as you are planning out your content, as you are thinking about the cadence of your content, yes, you want to be consistent. Yes, you want to get your message out there and tell people what's going on or communicate the stories that you have. But you have to have some level of quality control and never be afraid if something doesn't reach that threshold to just not do it. And you will, I promise you, end up with better results if you focus on quality over quantity. So, how do we create engaging content? We want to create content that creates emotional connections. We want to make the consumer the hero. And we want to tap into shared experiences. And I'm going to give you a few examples of each of those. So creating emotional connections. This is another example from Who Knows One show. We did a show that was sponsored by, oh crap, I'm blanking on the name of the organization. It's the organization that does the screening for cancer. I'm sure someone knows it. I'm totally blanking in the moment. But regardless, Jay Feinberg is the founder and president of the organization, and he was the chosen one for the episode that we did. No, it's not Be the Match. If someone says it, I'll remember it, and I can't believe I'm forgetting it. The contestant who was trying to find him found this woman, Hindi Popko, who ended up knowing him and brought him on. And she was actually a user of their service. And her daughter had needed a transplant and unfortunately died. But the day that we did that show would have been her like 5th or 6th birthday. And so it was this incredibly profound moment where she was talking with him about the impact of their organization, Gift of Life. I think Gift of Life is correct. The Gift of Life Registry. And obviously her specific story was very sad, but the overall message of what the organization does for people was incredibly powerful. And I think made a huge, impact on the audience that was watching it. An emotional connection for sure. Making the consumer the hero. This is another one that I find brands do incorrectly a lot. When you think about your organization, it's intuitive to think about yourself as the hero of the story, so to speak. But really, you are the facilitator for other people's lives, for their stories, for them to be the heroes. This is a photo of someone, when I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, posted this on Instagram. This is how they proposed to their then girlfriend, soon fiance. They were both huge fans of Buffalo Wild Wings, and he posted this. So we saw that and gifted them with a engagement photo shoot at one of our restaurants. They didn't have to spend a dime for it. We hired a professional photographer and met them at their local B-dubs and created this photo shoot for them. They're getting married. This is the most incredible time in their lives. And we gave them this wonderful memory to create as part of that journey that they would always remember, and therefore have a very positive opinion of our brand. And we did that because we made them the heroes of the story. We were the facilitators. Think about shared experiences. So a lot of times on Who Knows One, we have a lot of things that are common. If you've watched the show a lot, you'll see things happen periodically, like someone is driving in a car and nearly gives me a heart attack because I'm terrified that they're going to have an accident while they're trying to find somebody. Or someone will say the Zoom link isn't working. Or someone's Facebook, they're watching the show at the same time and there's a feedback audio loop, so we have to tell them to turn down their Facebook. So from time to time, we'll play Who Knows One bingo, and people can play along while they're watching the show. And again, it's sort of thing that everyone, if you've seen the show, is a part of and can recognize, and it gives a feeling of insiderness, that you're a part of a community. So this is a shared experience. There's tons of ways that you can tap into the shared experiences that you have with your community and create content from that. So let's talk about implementing content strategy. It helps to get organized if you can. So here's a very rough outline of how you can create a workflow for your content. Number one, come up with ideas. Sit down and have a brainstorm to think about what are the stories, what are the opportunities. We're going to go into more detail for each of these, but just to give a quick overview. Build yourself a content calendar. That can be helpful. Again, it's still quality over quantity, but giving yourself some guidelines can be useful. Get buy-in and establish an approval process. This is very useful. The larger an organization you work in, you might work in an organization where you're all of these things at once. So this step might not be as important to you, but if you answer to somebody, it's important that you have their buy-in on what you're doing from a content standpoint, because content is very subjective. Assign roles, who's in charge of what, again, depending on the size of your operations. And then obviously publish your content, get it out there so that people can see it, can learn from it, and can share it. So brainstorming ideas. If you are a bank, you might think, well, there's only a few things we can talk about. We can just talk about money. That's basically it. That's not really true, though. We are a basketball team at the Hawks, so all we can talk about is basketball, but that's not really true. We created a series of what we called content pillars. And within each of these pillars, we started to brainstorm out different topics that we could storytell from. So we're in the entertainment business, and NBA has a lot of overlap with popular culture. So we have the right to talk about what's in fashion, what's popular in music, what are hobbies that our players have, how do they stay fit. We can talk about lifestyle. We can talk about health. These are professional athletes. They have to stay healthy. They have to recover from injuries. We can talk about our fans. We can profile our season ticket holders and people who have interesting stories about their relationship to the team. And we can tell uplifting community stories, how we're making an impact in our community. So whatever you do, I guarantee you can come up with a number of different categories from which you can then list out a variety of different options with which to create stories. You can build out a content calendar. It does not need to be this robust. I worked at an agency for a couple of years, and this is a slide that was a typical month for us. We would have several things going each month, but they all had a purpose. And they all, when done right, we felt like passed that value test. I'll just say, staring at a blank screen is very intimidating when you're trying to plan your content. So having some sort of calendar just to give you some shape can really make it easier for you to do it. Create recurring programs. This is a little bit of what I was just talking about. Having recurring programs creates expectations with your audience. Oh, the first of the month, they're going to do this. I really like that story that they share, that series of stories that they share. So I'm going to look forward to that because I know they're going to publish it at the first of the month. It can create a common language. Again, going back to the bingo example from Who Knows One. If you watch the show regularly, you get those inside jokes, so to speak, and it becomes a shorthand for people within the community to communicate with each other. And then tap into your talent. I personally am very lazy, and the less work I have to do, the happier I am. So if I have other people who I can tap into for their expertise, for their stories, that's less work for me, and everybody wins. So think about the people in your community and how you can uplift their stories to accomplish your organizational goals, but also your content goals. Creating expectations. If you've seen the virtual show or our in-person show for that matter, we have an oath that we make people take so they don't cheat, even though everyone still cheats, much to my dismay. And we have an oath that we do, and everyone raises their hand and recites the Who Knows One oath, and people look forward to it. And they raise their hand, and I say, I state your name, and you can tell if someone has seen the show before, because if they haven't seen the show, then they'll say I and their actual name. And if they've seen the show, then they'll say, I state your name. So people look forward to that and other little bits along the way that are sort of highlights within each episode of the show. And you have things like that you can draw from within your own communities as well. Create a common language. Another example of that from the show is a game that we play called Hey, Do You Know This Person? And when I introduce the game, there's a very specific way that I introduce it. I say, hey, and then I tilt my head to the side, and then as high a register possible, I say the rest of the game. So it's, hey. And as people are watching the show, they will invariably start to tilt their head to the side when we get to that part of the show. And it's very silly, but, it's a lot of fun. And when people see you tilt your head, they know exactly what's about to happen. Tap into your talent. This is a photo from the Diller teens, and they get together in Israel every year, or most years they get together in Israel with all their teens from around the world, and they have so many stories that they can pull from these teens in these communities all over the globe. The version of the show of Who Knows One that I do in person features a game that I first did with the Diller teens during the pandemic, where we did a show with them where we had contestants on 6 continents, and we were able to connect them within a span of like 5-10 minutes. And it was incredible. But they have such reach with just these teenagers and the alums to tell so many varied stories. So think about your talent. Who is available to you, and what stories do they have to share, and how can you amplify them? All right, very quickly, I'm going to take you through a case study that will show all this in play, no pun intended, and then we'll wrap things up and we can have some questions if you have them. So I worked for the Hawks, like I said. When I started with the Hawks, we were essentially the most forgotten franchise in the league. Nobody cared about us. And really, when I talked about apathy and being ignored, it's way worse to have an apathetic community than a fan base that hates you. Hatred requires effort. Apathy requires zero. So we had very little history of success. Atlanta is a transient community, so a lot of people that live there are from other places. Their rooting rights are already spoken for. It's a star-driven marketplace, so fans don't even really care if the team's any good. They want a star. We didn't have that. Apathy, that was our biggest challenge. What was our why in social media with our content? What were we trying to accomplish? We wanted to be the voice of the Hawks fan. We wanted to rise when the team was doing well and be crestfallen when the team was doing poorly, because that's the experience of a fan. Our goals were to become relevant, to build relationships, to be authentic, which is difficult when your team sucks, but is important. And to create something that we could sustain regardless of how the team did, which is incredibly important in sports because you have no control whatsoever as a content marketer of how the team is going to do. None of us were on the team. So these were our goals, to try to create something that could stand out on its own regardless of how the team was doing, and to have fun. This gets lost so often. We're a sports team. There are many more important things going on in the world than whether our team wins or loses. So let's have a good time together, because this is what it should be. It should be an escape. So our goal is to make ourselves relevant. Our value proposition as the team's own content creators is we have access to the team. We have more access than anybody else. Our target audience was Hawks fans, young Hawks fans, and young NBA fans. All the people that moved to Atlanta and stayed there and had children, and their children grew up in Atlanta. Well, the parents might be spoken for, but those kids are up for grabs. And when I talk about long-term versus short-term, our average age on Twitter, which was our most popular social media platform, was like 17. We're not getting many dollars from 17-year-olds. We're not getting season tickets from 17-year-olds. We might get a hat, maybe a game or two every now and then, but they're not really spending money that's going to sustain us today. But 10 years from now, when they're out of college and in the workforce and maybe have some disposable income, if they're diehard Hawks fans, that's going to pay off. Well, I can't really prove that that is true, that anything we posted on social media 10 years from now, I'm not going to be able to say, oh, look, that season ticket, that's because of something we did. But we know intellectually that there's a causation to that effect. So our target was the people we could convert who didn't have their rooting interest spoken for. How do we want to communicate? The way people communicate on the internet, the way people talk on Twitter, on Facebook, jokes, trash talk, memes, etc. And then where are we placing our content? Well, Twitter was really popular, RIP. Facebook and Instagram were popular. Pinterest was not really a place for us. When Snapchat became important, we moved to Snapchat. I have to imagine, it's been a while since I was at the Hawks, but I imagine they're pretty active on TikTok. You go where the fish are biting. When is our audience active? Well, they're most active around games. So we leveled up our participation and our content generation in the hour or two before games, during games, and then immediately after games. So an example of some of these different things, being relevant. We got destroyed by San Antonio one game, and it was the same day that, I don't know if y'all watched or remember when they blew up the Georgia Dome. They had a video showing the explosion, and people love to see big explosions like that. And I mean, you couldn't have timed it more perfectly. Right as it detonated, a MARTA city bus drove into the shot and obscured the view of the Georgia Dome exploding. And this became a worldwide meme. And so that night, they were getting killed by San Antonio. This was what they posted as the final graphic. It's relevant, it's amusing, and it's authentic. We know we got killed. Let's not pretend we didn't. Building relationships. We did this thing called the Hawks Fan Takeover, where we did not tweet anything during these games. Instead, all we did was our fans would tweet things with the hashtag Hawks Fan Takeover, and then we just retweeted our fans and let them give all the commentary for the evening. It gave them a chance to shine. It gave them a chance to be part of the story, and people really appreciate that. All right, I'm going to scroll through these last couple things, and then we'll get to questions. Here's another example of being authentic. I don't know why all of my examples are of times that the Hawks got destroyed, but there's the crying Jordan meme for our score because we were down by, I think, like 37 points. Speaking the language, think about how people talk on the platforms you're using. Talk like that. Don't talk like a brand. Talk like a person. And then have fun. We started to do this during this incredible winning streak we had, where we started adding a W every single time the Hawks won to our Twitter handle. And we ended up winning 19 games in a row. And so it ended up going very, very long, to the point that this was talked about on SportsCenter every single night during this win streak as it got deeper and deeper. As a marketer, what more can you ask for than being on the most important sports TV show? Okay, just to recap, what is content marketing? It is all about the value proposition, and it is all about being authentic, informative, and entertaining. Ideally, you want to be all three of those things at once, but at least be one of them. How do you create engaging content? You want to create a sense that people are missing out if they are not engaging with you, if they're not participating with you. And you want to tap into your talent. Use them to tell your stories. Be lazy. Building a useful content strategy. Know your why. Know what your organization is there for. Know who your audience is. And know what sets you apart from the other people vying for their attention. Create expectations. Create things that people can look forward to. And always remember quality over quantity. And with that, are there any questions?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Micah. Really engaging, entertaining, and very, very provocative, I think, for everybody on the call to think about how to apply these ideas to our settings. So I really urge everyone to open up, put your videos on and ask away, or give ideas of how what's already germinating for you.
I have a question. I'll start.
Yeah.
How do you get people? There's like on social media, you want people to like your posts, right? Because then they get higher up, and you want people to reshare your posts. How do you make that happen? I mean, I know you're going to tell me be authentic, be fun, be entertaining, but do organizations pay people to like how do you start? How do you get there?
Yeah, it's a very good question, and it's an important question. And you're right. My answer for you is there's honestly, there's not a secret to it. You have to create something that makes them want to do that. There are people who will post, prompts like this post, share this post, and you can do that. But I would say in 2023, in 5784, people know how to use social media. They don't need to be told how to use the platforms. They'll do it if they want to do it. And your job is to make them want to do it. So I think, I'll use Who Knows One as an example. In the aftermath of what's happened in the last couple of weeks, wanting to feel like, what can I do? What can we as an organization, so to speak, do to be helpful? Well, I thought about what's our value proposition. And I think of Who Knows One as a connector. We bring people together. We try to get from point A to point B. So felt like our opportunity to help was if people were trying to make connections, someone's trying to get materials to a community in Israel, someone's trying to find out information about someone they haven't been able to contact, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Let us know, and then we'll amplify it. So I put that call out on social media, on Facebook, and the prompt was, let us know in the comments. So people started commenting, oh, you should hey person, are you trying to help this person? Or people were messaging us and then we were posting additional posts and sharing things. So like a specific call to action can be useful, but I would just caution you to do it in a way that doesn't feel like you are pretending they don't know how to use the platform. But again, really at the end of the day, it's about creating something that people will want to engage with. But your point is correct. Social media, the algorithms reward you for engagement. So I would tell you your most important metrics are not how many people follow you or even necessarily how many people see a thing. You'll know it's successful if they take some kind of action, if they share, if they comment, if they tag somebody. Tagging somebody is usually like probably the best thing you can get someone to do, I would say at this point, because organic reach is so small now. You can pay for it, by the way. You can't necessarily pay people to like things, but you can do a paid campaign to put it in front of people who are more likely to like things. If they know, if Facebook knows based on your history that you press the like button a lot and you do a paid campaign towards that end, you know, you probably will get some more likes. But to me, I don't know how much that does for me. I want authenticity. I want people to make decisions to take action because they felt it, not because I told them to, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyone have thoughts already of how you might apply some of these ideas? Go ahead, Marcia. Hi, nice to see you. You're still muted.
There we go. There we go. So, like many of you, perhaps all of you, are getting masses of info all the time right now, news and so many feeds and, you know, just masses of traumatic stuff. And I've been thinking about what I need at this moment. And I need community and prayer and to be able to connect with my friends and family in Israel and the IDF. Those are kind of the three things that I need in a way. So, in terms of thinking about what I want to say out there, is I want to just send out moments of prayer and moments of breathing and moments of, yeah, we're all feeling this. But there's also a lot of that out there too, although I see that less than I see the news. So I'm just thinking about that and just thinking about, you've made me think about, rather than being rabbi, which is what I am, just being one of the many who have no answers, but just have a lot of feelings.
So
And-
to me,
Yeah.
oh, sorry, keep going. Keep going.
No, that's it.
Well, I think you said something that to me is very important to point out, which is you're a rabbi, right? And a lot of people have expectations of what a rabbi does and says at any given moment. But you're a person. And to pretend that you're not hurting or that you don't need something because you're a rabbi or because of any number of reasons is inauthentic. It is authentic for you to say, as a person and as a rabbi, I don't have the answers, or I'm not saying you're saying that, but I need something. I want something. That authenticity is what connects people. And I think it's really powerful in a way when people look to rabbis for answers, to hear a rabbi say, I don't have the answer on this one, because that is authentic and therefore very relatable.
Mm. Mm. Thank
Yeah, sorry.
Maybe one more question. Anyone? Nahama?
So I'm caught, I'm not in a congregation and I'm dealing with an initiative around Hebrew, and I'm caught with this the situation today. There are things that I would love to put out, but I know that people aren't necessarily in the mood for it. I'm on a limited time grant, like it's all those things. So do you have any thoughts on how to be respectful to the time, and yet also the time meaning all these emotions and feelings that people are having? And I see my colleagues are highly distracted by, and I don't even mean the word distracted, but it's like the pandemic. Their time is just sucked with this, and they don't really have space for me. But so, like, do you have any thoughts on how to deal with this?
I have a lot of thoughts.
Yay.
To be perfectly honest, I'm struggling with the same thing. I mean, I who knows one is what I do for a living. And just to be completely transparent, like, we're past high holy days. This is the time that I would often be trying to solicit more shows for the spring and be doing a lot of outreach. And I really don't feel comfortable doing that right now, because it just feels tone deaf. And, I want to be as respectful as possible. All of which is to say, I don't think there's a clear answer. I think being authentic and saying, like, hey, listen, this may not be the right time, but I need an answer on this. And just always leading as a human, I think, is the best advice I can give you. Is like, it makes sense that we're all distracted. Unfortunately, the pandemic is a really apt, I think, suggestion, because it's not the same, but it feels very much to me the same kind of fog at the, what we're going through. It's hard to pay attention to the nuts and bolts. Everything feels very small. Nothing feels important compared to this shared experience that we're living through right now. So I think as long as you're just honest and upfront about it, you can still do it, but just be very, discerning with who you're going to reach out to and what your relationship is. That's probably the other thing I would say. An example I always give when it comes to like sales. If you meet someone at a picnic and the next day they email you and say, hey, my son's doing a fundraiser to school, would you mind supporting it? You're like, I don't even know this dude. Why would I give to that? And you're put off, right? But if you've been friends with someone for 20 years and they know that you never asked them to support something, and then you reach out and say, hey, my kid's doing this thing, it'd mean a lot to me if you would support it. You have that relationship with them. They're very likely to have a different reaction to you asking for something. So think about the people that you can have those kinds of conversations with, that you have a relationship with. Maybe it's not the time to cold call someone, but maybe someone who you can say, like, listen, this is really not what I want to do right now, but unfortunately I have to because of what we're working on. I think people can relate to that as long as you come from a human standpoint first, rather than a brand or business standpoint.
Thank you.
That's my thoughts, at least.
Thank you all for coming, Micah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You always end your shows or often by asking if there's an organization that we can make a donation to that's important to you. So if there's one, you're welcome to think about it and email me or tell me now. And I also, that sort of segue into your show and what to do about it. I saw last night on social media, you've given a lot of thought to, and wanted to know if you wanted to let people know about your next show and about your live shows. And I highly, highly, highly recommend Micah's live shows. He did one for our community last year, and it was the best event. I mean, people just said afterwards, it was the best event. It was so much fun. We should do more stuff like this.
Thank you for that, Robin. We're supposed to have a show tomorrow night, and I just didn't feel like I was ready to go back to having fun. Though I do recognize that, we have to continue to be joyful, and that is important, even in the face of all this. But we're going to wait until next week. So if you want to catch the virtual show, our next show is next Wednesday. But if you want to bring the show to your community, I'll echo what Robin said. It's so much fun. It is so different than what most Jewish programs look like. And it is all about the spirit of connection and community. So I would love to come visit your community, whether it's for, I mean, really any age group. We do it for all ages, both together or, young adults, teens, et cetera, et cetera. It's a wonderful live show. And if you are interested, you can reach out to me at Micah at whoknowsone.com. If you are interested, I live in Spain. So I do basically tours where I come back through the States and do a number of shows over a span of like a week or two. So if you're interested in that, or if you know any organizations that you think would be interested in it, I guarantee you'll be happy you did. So
Mike,
thank you. What's that?
just can you confirm for everybody how they find you on Facebook? Because I assume that's how you still find the show.
Sure. Yep. It's facebook.com/whoknowsone. So the email is whoknowsone.com, but Facebook it's whoknowsone. And another time I'll share the story of why it's who knows the number and not the written out who knows one. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was useful. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm always happy to try to help people as they're navigating this stuff. I worked for some pretty big brands. They typically have a lot of resources. So you may not share that. So I'm always happy if I can to help you figure out what you're trying to do. But thanks for your time and attention.
Our next workshop is November 14th. And we have an award-winning children's author, Susan Lynn Meyer, coming, who will discuss some of her research in writing a historical fiction novel, and also how to help students interview family members or other people in their community and then write the stories about them. It's November 14th, and we'll send you lots of emails. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good to see everyone.